"Adopt me and I will cure your kids," the little girl said, her voice calm and unwavering. The wealthy lady chuckled, dismissing her words as the innocent ramblings of a child. But her laughter turned to shock when moments later, a miracle unfolded. The heat of the afternoon sun beat down on the crowded city street. But for one mother, the world around her seemed to vanish into a suffocating silence. She knelt beside two wheelchairs, her hands gently holding her sons in place as they squirmed restlessly in the shade of a nearby storefront. The boys, no older than 7, shared the same pale complexion, the same soft blonde hair, and the same sorrowful expressions. Dressed neatly in their navy blue shirts and brown trousers that hung loosely over their lifeless legs, they were twins bound by a reality they couldn't escape. Their mother, a woman in her early 30s, stood with a poise that masked the fatigue deep within her. Clad in a sharp black suit, she glanced between her children, her eyes holding a quiet strength that spoke volumes. Yet there was also exhaustion in her gaze. Exhaustion from the endless stares, the unspoken questions, and the invisible burden of wealth that couldn't buy her the one thing she yearned for most, her children's health. And then from the edge of her quiet world, a voice broke through the noise. A voice small yet powerful in its clarity. "Adopt me." The mother froze. Turning, she saw a little girl standing no more than a few feet away. Barely 5 years old, the child wore a brown dress that had been worn and wrinkled beneath a blue coat. Her black leggings were scuffed at the knees, and her brown shoes were worn down by countless miles. Her hair was neatly tied back, and her eyes, large and unblinking, held an unsettling depth that made the mother pause. Uncertain she had heard correctly, the mother blinked, her heart racing. "What did you say?" she asked, her voice shaky. The little girl didn't flinch. She lifted her chin, pointed her tiny finger directly at the mother, and repeated, each word weighted with a certainty beyond her years, "Adopt me and I will cure your kids." For a moment, the woman almost laughed, though there was nothing funny about it. The words were so absurd, so out of place, she couldn't even begin to process them. Cure them? Her twins had been diagnosed when they were still babies. She'd spared no expense, rushing them to the best doctors in New York, flying them to top specialists across Europe, and pouring millions into every possible treatment. All she ever got in return were polite, distant shakes of the head, clinical reports full of polite language, and the quiet pity of those who knew that money could only buy so much. "Sweetheart," she said, struggling to keep her tone steady, "you don't really understand what you're saying." But the little girl didn't falter. Her gaze was unwavering and her voice, when she spoke again, was firm. "I know exactly what I'm saying." The twins, silent up until that point, exchanged a look. The boy in the white shirt tugged gently at his mother's sleeve. "Mama, who is she?" The woman forced a smile, brushing his hair back with trembling fingers. "Just a little girl. She's not trying to cause trouble." She turned back to the girl, her voice growing firmer. "But you shouldn't say things like that. It's not kind." The girl's lips pressed into a thin line, but her eyes never lost their intensity. "I'm not being unkind. I'm telling the truth." The boy in navy leaned forward, curiosity flickering in his eyes. "What do you mean, cure us?" The woman's heart twisted painfully in her chest. Her voice cracked as she quickly responded, "Don't listen," her words sharp now, full of fear. "She doesn't understand." But the little girl interrupted, her voice calm but certain. "I understand more than you think." She took a step forward, her shoes softly tapping against the ground. "You look at them and see illness. You see limits. But I don't. I see boys who were meant to walk." The mother's throat tightened. She straightened, trying to regain control. "That's enough," she said, her voice shaky. "You can't say that to them. Do you know how long I've fought to fix this? How many nights I've spent crying? Is it fair to give them hope when even the best doctors—" Her voice faltered, cracking with emotion. The little girl didn't blink. "Doctors can be wrong." The woman inhaled sharply, her hands trembling. The words cut deeper than she expected, because in her darkest moments she had wondered the same thing. What if they were wrong? What if there was something she missed? But hearing it from a child, someone with nothing, felt unbearable. "You're just a little girl," she said finally, almost pleading. "You don't understand the weight of promises like that." "I know what I feel," the girl replied softly, her gaze flicking to the twins. "If you take me home, if you give me a family, I'll make them better." The boy in white leaned toward his brother, his voice barely a whisper. "Mama, what if she's telling the truth?" The woman's heart raced. She looked at them, at their fragile legs resting on the footrests, at their small hands folded in their laps. They were children. They deserved answers, stability, safety, not false hope from a girl who had no place to sleep. "And what if she's wrong?" she whispered, mostly to herself. The girl stepped forward again, her voice unwavering. "Then you lose nothing. But if I'm right, you gain everything." The mother's eyes burned with unshed tears. She wanted to dismiss the girl, walk away, but she couldn't. Not when the twins were looking at her, their faces full of cautious hope, hope she hadn't seen in years. The silence between them was thick, suffocating. The mother crossed her arms, trying to steady herself. But inside, a storm swirled, fear, anger, grief, and the faintest spark of hope. For the first time in years she felt the ground shift beneath her. A stranger's words, impossible as they seemed, had shaken her more than every medical report she had ever read. The millionaire mother stood frozen on the sidewalk, the words haunting her thoughts. "Then you lose nothing. But if I'm right, you gain everything." The little girl's certainty lodged like a stone in her chest. That night, sleep wouldn't come. The twins, sound asleep in their beds, breathed steadily, while their mother lay wide-eyed in her penthouse, staring at the ceiling. She tried to laugh at herself. How could a woman who ran companies, struck billion-dollar deals, and never bent to anyone's will be so affected by a child on the street? Yet every time she closed her eyes, she saw that little finger pointed at her, those unwavering eyes, and her son's soft voices whispering, "What if she's telling the truth?" By morning, the thought had rooted too deeply to ignore. Against all logic, she found herself back at the children's shelter she'd passed by so many times, never giving it a second thought. There, sitting quietly on a bench, was the same little girl, still wearing her pink dress and beige coat. When their eyes met, the girl stood as if she had been waiting all along. "I knew you'd come," the little girl said, her voice soft but sure. The woman faltered. "Don't be so sure of yourself," she muttered, though her voice trembled. The girl tilted her head, her gaze unyielding. "You wouldn't be here if you didn't believe me even a little." The woman wanted to argue, to reject it all, but she couldn't. Instead, she signed the papers that day, part impulse, part defiance against the voice of reason. And just like that, the girl was no longer an orphan. She was in their home. That first night, the twins watched her with quiet curiosity. At dinner, the boy in white leaned in and whispered, "What do we call you?" The girl smiled softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Call me whatever you want." The boy in navy hesitated for a moment, then smiled shyly. "Sister." The mother's heart froze at the word, but the girl's eyes lit up with something bright and pure. "Yes, sister," she said, her voice full of warmth. Days slipped into weeks, and the change was slow, almost imperceptible at first. But soon the twins laughed more. Their once quiet room became a place of chatter, secrets, and games. For the first time in years, the house felt alive. One evening, as the mother passed the nursery door, she stopped in her tracks. Inside, the girl knelt beside the boy in the navy shirt, her small hand resting gently on his knee. "You can do it," she whispered softly. "Just try." The boy frowned, frustration creeping into his voice. "It doesn't work." "Try," she urged, her tone gentle but unwavering. The mother leaned against the doorframe, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to step in, to stop what felt like another heartache waiting to unfold. But before she could move, the boy shifted. his foot barely touching the floor pressed down, and then, his eyes widened. "Mama," he called, his voice trembling with excitement. "Mama, I felt it." The woman's hand flew to her mouth. It could have been nothing, just a twitch, a nervous reflex. But when she looked into her son's face, she saw something she hadn't seen in years. Belief. A week later, the second twin followed. First a stretch, then a tentative kick, and finally, a shaky attempt to stand. It wasn't immediate. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Their legs, once written off as lifeless, had begun to move. The mother stood in stunned silence, watching as both boys gripped the side of the sofa. Slowly, unsteadily, they pulled themselves upright. Their laughter filled the room, so pure and joyful it made her knees buckle. She sank into a chair, tears blurring her vision. The girl stood close by, arms crossed, her expression calm, as though she had always known this moment would come. "How?" the mother whispered, her voice raw. "How did you?" The girl shook her head, her voice soft but sure. "I didn't. They did. I just reminded them they could." The mother pressed her hands to her face, overcome by the years of struggle, the doctors, the money, and the endless despair. Yet it was this little girl, with nothing but determination, who had sparked the miracle. The twins, wobbly but determined, stumbled toward her. "Mama," they called, arms outstretched, and threw themselves into her embrace. She held them tightly, sobbing into their hair. As she pulled back, her gaze met the girls'. For the first time, the millionaire mother didn't see a stranger or a child making impossible promises. She saw family. Later that night, as the city lights sparkled outside, the mother sat, watching the three children together. The twins leaned against their new sister, all three laughing softly in the warm glow of the lamp. She whispered the truth to herself, a truth she had once refused to accept. "I laughed at her. I thought she was naive. But she gave me back what I had lost." The girl caught her gaze and smiled as if to say, "I told you so." In that moment, the mother understood. Miracles don't always come in the form of doctors or medicine. Sometimes they arrive in the shape of a little girl in a pink dress, standing on a sidewalk with nothing but unwavering faith in her voice. What had started as an impossible promise became the story of her life the moment a stranger delivered on it. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And we'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop a comment below. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.